Have you ever wondered what happens to the people you love when they cross over, when they leave their mortal coil and they get beyond? And maybe you feel like they're still there, right there with you. Maybe you can feel their vibration, or you feel like you're receiving messages from them. Today, we're going to hear from Carla Adams about the Ancestral River and the 5 things that ancestors need in order to cross over, as well as an ancient practice of holding that we can do for our descendants, our kids, and our grandkids to support them in living a better life. Join us to find out more.
Soul Nectar Show, the Soul Nectar Show. You're invited, delighted to discover who you are. Anything is possible if you believe. So join us on this beautiful journey. Soul Nectar Show, Soul Nectar Show.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is greater than us, to the big mystery beyond the veil, to those synchronistic moments that lead us inexorably to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our purpose in this life, what we're here to do, be, and take action on. I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird. I love having these conversations week after week and, dropping into the mystery more and exploring it from a different angle, a different perspective. And this week, we're going to have just an amazing conversation about the ancestors. And, I know in my own work, just how powerful it is when we can connect with our ancestors and we can bring healing to things that are in the ancestral DNA that are unresolved and that are affecting our lives today that we inherited. And at the same time, we can also claim the gifts and strengths of our ancestors as well and honor our ancestors in this incarnation as we are the result of their love. We are the result of their persistence, their devotion, their ability to survive and thrive in the world. And because of them and their commitment, we're here alive and we also get to thrive. And so there's just so much that we could learn about working with the ancestors. And today we're going to learn a lot about how our guest has worked with these ancestors to understand what they need in order to cross over. And we're going to talk about the 5 spiritual centers. And we're going to talk about holding intention, which is a great practice for any moms that want to support your kids and grandkids, future generations, descendants. So what a powerful discussion we're going to have today. I can't wait to get into it. Our guest is Carla Adams. Welcome, Carla.
Well, thank you. So good to be here, Carrie. I really look forward to having this conversation with you and making some of the information available to other mothers so they can put it into practice. And so, yeah, we'll have fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited. So Carla is actually a former nursing home administrator who accidentally became a medium. And we're going to hear that story. It's a pretty interesting story. And now she uses tuning forks and her body and her voice as a fork to administer energy healing to mothers and women who hope to be moms, who desire that emotional, spiritual transformation for themselves and their children. And she's written a book called Ancestral River, a spiritual journey for the living and the dead, that shares her own story of inner healing, as well as her experiences and ancestral clearing, and those 5 things that we talked about that the ancestors need in order to pass over to the next realm, as well as this ancient practice of holding the spirit's intentions for our loved ones. And this is so powerful. We're going to just jump right in. So tell us your story. So I know that you were a nursing home administrator. You were probably familiar with, death and dying and people getting ready to cross over, right? So you were already in that space, but then you started talking with actual departed people. So how
Right.
does this work? Tell us about your story.
Let's see. Yeah, I was a nursing home administrator for several years, working with the families and the residents. And then I had a gap of a few years when I was working with elderly women in their homes, helping with house cleaning and gardening so they could stay at home longer. And then I kind of hit my bottom through my life story, right? And we were home. My husband and I were homesteading off grid, and I realized I hadn't fully grieved when my own father had died, and that on top of all the physical hardness and feeling separation and all my emotional junk throughout my whole life kind of just came to a head, and I knew I had to do something. And so I picked to live close to my older son. My younger son lived farther away, but my older son lived halfway between my mother and my mother-in-law. So that was a good place to land. So we moved into this really turn of the century house. 1900 is what the county has it being built in. And it wasn't more than, I don't know, 2 months that we lived here. And I had taken the biofield tuning foundations class, so I was starting to practice with forks. And one day I was just sitting, excuse me, I was sitting at my kitchen table, and my grandfather stood next to me. And it was like he'd been dead 25 years, right? And I couldn't see him with my eyes, but I could track where he was, and I could see him in my mind. And he was so real and so there. And he said he wanted to go to the oneness and he needed my help. So I was real scared. But of course, I wanted to help. And so I made that choice. And so I just kind of followed the spirit, the guidance of intuition and the spirit around me as I worked, and helped him. And he was able to go to the oneness. And then I helped other ancestors because I realized, well, if when I was tuning him, it was like, oh, I found all of his emotions in me. And so I thought, well, if he's in me, all my ancestors are in me and all their junk is in me too. And so maybe some of my junk that I'd carried all my life was theirs. And so I went through each of my ancestors for 4 generations, either individually or as a couple, starting with my parents and then back to 4th generation grandparents, and found what I had in common with each of them. A lot of times I experienced their emotions or sometimes mental pictures as I worked in the biofield. And so it was like I knew them after I was done, and realized, their hardships. And yes, I found some of the deep things I struggled with, like sadness and feeling unworthy and all the regrets I had forever in my life, and which ancestors they came from. And it was beautiful. And it I don't know, it's like, much better than a family reunion, because you go to family reunion and you hardly know anybody, right? You know a few people, but you don't know them deeply. And here, their souls were bare to me and mine to them. And so we were like loved right away.
Oh, that's so
And
powerful. I've got a question for you actually that just came up, is that it feels like to me that there are some ancestors who linger here after their death because maybe they don't know how to cross over. And then there's other ancestors that know how to cross over, and then they come back as sort of like spirit guides. And that there's like really different energy between an ancestor that has just been here but never crossed over, and another ancestor who did cross over and then came back as a guide. There's like a vibrational shift. And so your grandfather that was coming to you for help, was he one of the ones that was sort of stuck here not knowing how to go back, and has he subsequently returned as a, as a crossed over guide? As I'm just curious about that.
Oh, no, that's a great question. What I have found that it seems like the majority of people, unless they're very deeply spiritual in their life here, then most of them don't cross over. And so they're around us, they're spiritual around us in nature. I see them and feel them in grayscale, I call it. Like, you look at a picture, right? You'd have black and white, or you'd have bright color, and they're in grayscale. They're just very, very low voltage. And when I work with, say, angels or ancestors who have already crossed over, they are joyful. They're full of love and gratitude, and it's just beaming, and it fills my soul, right? It fills my home, my life with that. Whereas the ancestors around us are grayscale. And how I contribute that is that if we're not ready to cross over when we die, which it is possible, from what I've found in meditation and spiritual hypnosis and visions, is that everybody used to cross over from living to living in the next realm. And then it became impossible due to lower vibration on Earth and to loss of knowledge on what was needed to do so. And then so people could transition or cross over at the point of death. And then now it's hardly anybody can do that anymore, because what is needed isn't known or experienced. And so so the ones around us have the mindset of their physical life. Like, all of us have our own old stories, right? We have our own old patterns. We are hardly ever, before at least we start our healing journey and learning things and growing and transforming ourselves spiritually and emotionally, then we have the mindset of lack, right? The majority of us. The mindset of control or manipulation that we often see from the government or from people that try to exert that influence on us in relationships that aren't helpful to us and things. And so at the point of death, the physical body just transitions into a different form of energy and returns to the earth. Whereas the mindset then, which is our biofield, we have the physical brain in our body, but the biofield contains a record of all our lives. And that's in the space around us, about 5 or 6 feet away from our bodies. And so when a person dies, their body dies, and then their mindset is still the same as if they were living. And that's what I saw in the ancestors in mine that I helped, as well as clients that I worked with. And I began to see patterns of what all was needed before they could cross over. And again, I contributed with my experience and with a lot of deep meditation and vision, and through spiritual hypnosis, which I use to ask questions of myself and others in the oneness. Myself, of course, before I was there, or the part of me that is still there, that's everywhere, right? And so, yeah, I learned that there's 5 things that they need in general. And the first one is knowledge, which is what we were talking about. A lot of them, they die, and from what they've learned during their life, some people think they won't exist. Some people think they will be around and everything will be great. Some people think they'll be dancing in heaven, and some people think they'll be able to, talk to everybody all the time, and that maybe that's where heaven is anyway. Just, everybody would have their own idea of what it was, and they get there and everything's grayscale, and they still have their mindset. And it feels like, people can because they're so low voltage is the reason, it seems to me, they're unable to really communicate a lot with each other, and until they start learning and growing on their mindset then, and then as their voltage grows, then they can begin to communicate with each other. Now I've experienced some very hierarchical ancestors that try to manipulate and control people of the ancestors and the oneness. And because they know more, they have more voltage, and they're able to kind of take over and do this manipulation and such of people that don't know the knowledge. So it takes time to learn what they need to learn about how the afterlife works and what they need. And then they have to have the desire, the heart's desire, to want to go to the oneness, or want to be part of source or the goodness, right? Because they come from the mindset of lack, or the human mindset, and they have to have that heart's desire. And then they have to make a conscious choice whether they want to go or not. And then they have, just like we do, right? We have the stuck energy or heavy emotions that really weight us down. They have that too. And it keeps their voltage so low that they're unable to transition. So they have to clear some energy, clear
Yeah,
some
so
emotions.
this is matching what I was learning in school, at the Four Winds Light Body School, in terms
Well,
of like when we open sacred space, and like say I'm doing a house clearing where there's some energy, right, that's been sort of feeling dense or low, or like, it's a spirit there. And then I'll open sacred space, I'll call in the lineage, and the lineage that I work with is like a guidance system. Like they're just shamans, that are beyond the veil, that are just medicine people that are here to help others transition, right, and bring them to the light. And they're like so friendly and loving that it's like even people that never knew anything about that, they see these loving beings and they go, oh, okay, like I understand, okay, I'll come with you. Because I mean, it could happen like in the course of like just a few minutes, is that we clear out their chakras. So we have because they need a material in order to, they need something manifest in order to clear the hucha, the heavy energy. They need something manifest. Like, so we've been using like stones to clear their chakras, like anchor them here in reality, or like a person who would be a proxy, like somebody that would, like you could do it with your ancestors because you have their same DNA, right? But like, or a proxy, somebody else who's willing to just be a proxy for that person to put their energy in, so that everything can be cleared out, like you're talking about, the heavy dense energies, and then illuminate them, and then they can go. And so thank you, because that's the same information that I've been working with. And yeah, it's powerful how fast it happens, because
yes, it can happen quickly.
it's their choice. It's not, as soon as they choose and then the energy releases, it's like they can go.
Yeah. The other thing, like you'd said, the fifth thing they need then is our love, which is given through our attention, right? Their your client or yours or mine, working to give them attention, acknowledge their heart, their life. And I don't think they take our energy to do it. I think they tap into their energy within us because they're part of us. That's why it needs up at least to a few generations. It kind of depends on how much you know about your lineage. The more you know further back, the more they're going to come and require your help, because they want your help, because you're giving the attention. For people that don't know even their first generation grandparents, then it's not so much, because that love, that bond doesn't exist as highly, because you're not on their minds. You're not sharing memories and things, but they need our attention, our love. And then I realized, well, those 5 things, they correlate to the spiritual chakras or energy centers that are located in our biofield, because a lot of us are familiar with the chakras in our central channel, from root to crown. These exist in the biofield. One of them's below your feet. 18 to 24 inches. It kind of varies for each person. And that one's the energy of knowing that you're a spirit being and knowing that your spirit was meant to be in charge of your mind, that your mind's not meant to lead. And then there's one about that same distance, 18 to 24 inches above your crown. And that one's the energy of having enough desire to want to hear your spirit that you learn to align the hemispheres of your mind. We're so often in fight or flight of one kind or another, that we're in chronic low-grade scatteredness, right, on our mind because of our busy lives. And so have enough desire that you calm your mind and align those hemispheres, those paths of thinking, so that you can hear your spirit and listen to what it says and get to the point where eventually you become more and more able to recognize when you're at that choice point.
Yeah, and that is actually the corpus callosum, right? Because the corpus callosum is the part of the brain that connects the hemispheres.
Yes.
And in my tradition, that's connected with the archetypal energy of eagle and condor, because they can fly the highest in the sky. So
okay.
They bring you up to that, what you're talking about, that place of connection with your soul.
Yes.
Yeah, it's powerful.
And then the next chakra is about 3 to 4 feet above the top of your crown. And that's the energy of making that conscious choice.
Mm.
Sometimes the one closer, like 2 foot above your head, is called the life purpose, which is listening to your spirit, right? That's our life purpose. The soul purpose then is choosing, well, are you going to listen to your spirit? Are you going to live the way you're meant to live, right? And then there's another chakra that at the edge of your biofield, but on the inside edge of your biofield, and it has the information of, it's giving and receiving all the information, like all the light waves and light particles of the universe filter into you. We're made of more and more of that, and it's just that as it gets closer to our body, it becomes thicker. And so all that communication through the light waves then, or I should say the light waves on which the communication flows, becomes like our nervous system. And then from there into our brains, to filter that. And so that one's about, because it's about the energies of giving and receiving with the universe, it's about giving and receiving in harmony, but knowing all things are good for you. That work for your best interest in the long run, right? Because again, if our life purpose is to know we're spirit and live as spirit, then that's going to be the purpose of the universe and working for us, that we come to know that and come to live that way. And so then the fifth one is then on the outer edge of your biofield on the outside. And that's about realizing that because we all came from the oneness and returned to the oneness. We're all made of spirit, and all the light particles and the space between the particles, which is spirit. Then the universe can't be all it is meant to be unless I am all I'm meant to be. And so that's our love. That's that recognizing, having our acknowledgement for their life, their input in us and in the world. Now, if for the people that are able to transition at the point of death, I found they only need 2 things. Because some of those are more in alignment already, because they would have had some type of deep spiritual passion or desire. Their desire was already in place. And then they have what I would see as the angel, what some people would say as a guide or a higher self, would meet them at the point of death and tell them the other things they need to do, that they need to know in order to make a conscious choice. And then they make that conscious choice. So that's the living. They only need the desire and then make the conscious choice. And the universe provides the rest, basically.
So basically, people who would be did not cross over would be people who maybe were resistant to listening to their guide or higher self or whoever meets them. They would be resistant to that information somehow, or maybe they didn't want to leave. Maybe their death was unexpected and it didn't work out the way they thought it was going to work out, or it was sudden and they just weren't prepared. And maybe their beliefs were totally confronted too by what they experienced, right? Like this wasn't what it was supposed to
Mhm.
be.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced different things. Like um, one one woman that had recently died, I was familiar with her family. I didn't know her, but I was in meditation that morning after a few hours after she had died, and it was like she was suddenly here, and her mind was so scattered. She was trying to, she was just in shock, didn't know what to do, and she was trying to find her husband who had died a few years earlier, and hoping that he would help her, because maybe he made all the decisions when he was alive, right? Or I don't know. I didn't know her real well, but she came in scattered. And then there was a younger man in his 20s or late teens, even, that I had experienced where he was kind of interested in going. He was asking me about my work. I was walking by a cemetery and he was there and struck up a conversation, an ancestor. And it was like he was asking me all these deep questions. And he said, "Well, I'm not ready. My mom needs me." And so, some people stay, like you said, either they have that resistance themselves. He had died suddenly and unexpectedly, or some of them stay thinking they can help their aunts, their living descendants better. What I find is that many ancestors are benevolent. They do want to help, but I feel anyway, because they still have the mindset of lack, or the mindset of a human being, which is often interfered with, or finds interference or resistance because of all the emotions and patterns that we held from our life, that they don't always know the truth yet, or all the truths, and sometimes they're not always, though they want to help, they're not helping in the way that you really need their help. And so I prefer just to ask for guidance from the ones who have already crossed over. And in my work, I only allow the ones who either are crossed over already or who are wanting to clear that session to be present. Everybody else knows they can't come into my house where I do the sessions. I forget, there was some other point I was going to make on that I'm not remembering right now. So do you have any questions for me on that while I recover my line of
Yeah,
thought?
no, that was really great. Yeah, I've just noticed that the different people in my life that have passed away had different reactions to the end of life. And I feel like, you worked in a nursing home. So I feel like sometimes we can really support our ancestors in, or are going to be ancestors in coming into that acceptance of their death, right? And so like my grandmother, my dad's mom, she was not accepting this. She was really like, up until the very moment of her death, just really still in anger and resentment towards the father of her children, and just still not resolved, just really like stuck on that and not able to let go. And then my dad, when he passed away eventually, he had already prepared for it, for years. Like he had his will made. He told all the kids, this is the way it's going to happen. This is what's going to happen to the estate. This is how we're going to do things. And he got my mom all set up and made sure she had a nice place to live and made sure it was all taken care of and made sure we were good. And it was like after my partner, my new husband, Akeem, after 8 years ago, he came into my life and my dad met him. And about 6 months later, he let go. It's because he knew I was okay. It's like, all right, she's fine. I can go. Yeah. But I have to admit, I do call on him to watch over my oldest son because, he needs help. And, so sometimes I wonder, like, I know that he's crossed over and he's come back to be in service, but also he wants to be released. Like, he's like, I want to wrap this up. I want to go live another life, or I want to come back in. I don't really, how much longer is this going to go on for, and it's like, when are you going to be happy? When are you going to feel good, Carrie? So like, I feel like we can call in their help and, we can ask them for help and they're willing to do it. But then at some point we have to also let them go. Like they want to move forward. They're ready to release this or ready for a new adventure. They want to try something else. And so there's that too. It's like our letting go, it's like our releasing them.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I sometimes I call for my dad, just because you need your dad, right?
Yeah, I feel it right now. It's like I'm getting tears because I know he's standing right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll feel his hand on my shoulder or something. And other times when I just asked for help, a lot of times it was my grandfather who appeared to me in my kitchen that day. And it has to do with the mindset of the person because they still have their own personality. My dad was more spiritual and he crossed over at the point of death. And he knows I'm okay and he's okay, right? And so often he isn't always making me aware of his presence because he's doing his own thing, like you said, right? He wants to go beyond. My grandfather, now I helped him pass over, but it's more like his goal for now is to help his family because he feels, I wouldn't necessarily say it's regret, but he did a lot to guide his family in honest, practical, hardworking ways when he lived. And he got to that waiting place where I call it after death and realized that's not how he should have been leading us. He should have been leading us to know what he didn't know, right? And so that's what he's trying to do now, is to help me and help others in the family to know what we need to know.
Well, the thing about it is that you can't really, when you're in a body, unless you have a really good spiritual practice, we get trapped in those lower brains, our reptilian limbic brains, survival brains. And especially in Western culture, we make decisions so quickly and so reactively that, it sets into motion a lot of drama and things. So we're constantly just a lot of people are just constantly dealing with the drama. They're just like going from one day to the next day and try to do things, right? But when you get into the in-between space, you can see more clearly the ripple effects of all your choices that you couldn't see because you didn't slow down long enough to see it or didn't have a meditation or contemplation practice, right, to witness that. So it's like, oh no, it can be this sense of responsibility. Like I want to be there for my family to support them through these challenges so that they can get through this easier. And I think that's also a way of being in service, right? Like you're not in the body anymore, but as a soul, you are still stepping in as service, which is a key decision we have to make. Are we going to be in service to love, or are we going to be in service to self? And, so I feel like that's another opportunity maybe for your grandfather to like make that decision. I'm going to be in service to love. I'm going to, I feel like
so. And I think that's the main reason, from as far as I have understanding on it now, is why people come back for or have had past lives and continue to come forward. Their mind, I think anyway, it's been changed enough because of all the knowledge and love and all the things we talked about and higher voltage. And then they get to the oneness and have more knowledge and more joy and more change. And they want to help. They have that deep, passionate desire of love for the universe, and they want to try to help again. The bad part is that you get back and you're human again, right? And you still have the stuck energy and patterns that you're born with, or that you accumulated and things like that.
Yeah, but I think
So,
some people,
yeah.
I know a couple of people who were born awake, I like my friend Lisa Barnett, who does Akashic Record stuff. She's told me many times. She's like, yeah, when she was 5, all of a sudden she's just, or 3 or something. She looked at her hand and she saw her hand, and she was like, oh no, I'm in a body. Like she like woke up and
Oh,
realized, oh no, like I'm back here on Earth. What am I doing here? So she's
yeah.
been awake since then. And I didn't wake up till much later. But yeah, you're right. Like we go into the forgetting and we forget who we
Yeah,
are, and it takes us a while to remember. So,
that's right. Yeah,
yeah.
that's right.
So you were talking about ways that we can practice a holding to support our descendants, maybe from not having this issue anymore, or like lessen the load on it, right? Like so maybe they can wake up quicker, or they can just remember that they're one with everything, when they show up. That would be cool. Is that even
Right.
possible? So tell us more about like what practices could moms even do, to support kids and grandkids.
Right. I have found there's an ancient practice called holding that everybody used to know, so that when, even before children were born, then parents knew what the spirits desired, which is to know your oneness with God, the spirit, the universe. That's the deepest intention of our soul. And I had experienced that when I had trauma in the womb caused by my mom wanted more children, but she wasn't ready to be pregnant again. And it was like I felt that rejection and that fear, and went into panic basically in the womb. And so I relived that through hypnosis and meditation. And I realized that was the deepest desire we could any of us hold, because that's our spirit's desire to know that oneness. And then later I was shown some how that ancient practice of holding worked. So everybody would know the that was the spirit's deepest yearning, and they knew how those 5 chakras, the same 5 things that the ancestors need, they knew how those applied to what we need as living people in our being. The same thing, to know we're spirit, to have the passion, to desire to know, to align your minds, to choose, to receive all is good, and to fully express yourself. Those are the same things the ancestors need. And so um losing my train of thought. Anyway, so parents would hold those, grandparents, communities, so you have everybody of, way back whenever things started, everybody in the community, right, would know. And so you'd hold that for the children until they were old enough to hold it for themselves. And of course, now, no, hardly anyone knows that. And so we need to hold that for them, or I should, need isn't the right word. We have the gift of being able to hold those deep in spirit intentions for all our families and children's, until they get to the point where they know their spirit and they listen to their spirit, and so on. And so I do that. Some people would call it prayer. I don't see it as prayer as some people do, whereas you're talking to God necessarily, or your higher power. What I do in holding, I talk directly to the spirit of the person, because their mind doesn't know that they're even spirit, right? But their spirit knows, and it's aware. And so I set in quietness or in my mind. And it takes a while to practice once, especially if you're not familiar with connecting with that energy beyond what your eyes and ears can see and hear. It takes time. The other thing that takes time is that pathway has a lot of, just like our pathways in our biofield, it blocks a lot of the communication between us and our ancestors and our descendants. But we're very connected in the light waves, and we kind of flow in and out of each other. And so it's possible to have that communication. And so I just sit and I focus on one person at a time to start with. I can do the whole world now. I mean, not one person at a time, but as the whole, right? To hold the whole instead of all the parts, or in addition to all the parts. But so I hold that one person's name, and it might help to see them in your mind. It might help to put your mind in their house, right? Just so you can help that connection. And because there's so many interference in the light waves in my biofield and their biofield, then it might take a while. It might take several times or several months of practicing this before all of a sudden one day it's like, hi, Mom. Their spirit is right there with you, and you're holding that for that person, and they say, hi, Mom. And then then I go to another one, and then eventually in a few weeks it's, yeah, I'm coming too, Mom. And then I held it for, you can hold it for your grandchildren, for your friends' grandchildren's. That's how I had started with friends that were pregnant and trying to connect with that child, that infant in the womb yet, because I knew what I went through because of my mother's emotions. And so all the infants right in the womb feel those emotions that the mother goes through. And so you can hold their spirit when it's in the womb. And then I held my mother, right? And the people won't know you're holding them unless they're very sensitive to energy and spiritual things. They won't know what you're doing. But like sometimes it happens, you're thinking of them and all of a sudden your phone rings and it's them calling, right? And so that's a practice of holding. And then I have them, and once I gather my family and then gather all of nature and gather the ancestors in the waiting place or in nature that are ready to come, and gather in everybody that is living or has lived, and gather in those in the oneness, like every part of the whole nature. And then I hold them, and I divide it up into those 5 things. I picture in my mind, it's like, because I'm standing in proxy for everyone that's not holding their own, that doesn't know, right? And some of them they do know, like the ones in the oneness have crossed over, they know, so they're holding it with me. So you're not all by yourself, you're holding it with those who know. And it's like I'm saying then those 5 things, I'm holding that we, meaning me as proxy for everyone, we know we're spirit. We are aligning our minds to hear our spirit, and so on through each of the 5 things. And if you can do it when you're holding a tree, it's all the better, because the trees are connected to all the other trees and plants through the ground, the vibrations in the ground, and then their leaves broadcast all your energy throughout the world. So it magnifies it. And I do a thing on the equinoxes, it's called Friend a Tree, where I help people learn how to hold a tree and how to send those intentions through trees for the world. And
so what are the 5 statements that you make?
I say, well, it kind of in general is, if I'm in a hurry, I just say, I'll just say, we are knowing our oneness. But to get deep into things and to really hold that for them, I say, We know, we are knowing, we are spirit. I say it as an intention because it's the spirit's intention. We are knowing, we are spirit. We are aligning our minds to hear our spirit. We are choosing to live as spirit. We are we're living in harmony with the universe and receiving all things as for our highest good. And we are fully expressing our own intentions, our own desires, our own uniqueness, right, for the highest good of all, for our own restoration and for the restoration of all things.
So beautiful. What a beautiful prayer. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, and I
It's
do talk
gorgeous.
about that in the book too, if um
Yeah.
so if you want it in writing and to hear more of my story, you can check that out.
And that's an Ancestral River, a spiritual journey for the living and the dead by Carla Adams. It is on Amazon, and I will provide the link to in the show notes below so you guys can click and go buy her book and read it. And so, how else do you support people? I assume that you also can serve as a medium, and that you do biofield tuning and things like that. You can support people as people are really excited right now about, gosh, I wonder what ancestors are hanging around me that need help, and maybe I'm not getting the best advice, because they're coming from their fear minds, and I want to help them. Like
Right.
how, not to say that ancestors give bad advice, because I don't want to put that message out there. I can already feel them like, what are you talking
Right.
about?
Right. Oh,
So,
I
but
know.
like, but like the
Uh-huh.
higher vibrational, like wanting to like
Yes.
come from love, unconditional acceptance. Like what do you do with people? How do people work with you?
Well, use biofield tuning. So I use tuning forks. I also use my body and my voice as a tuning fork. And it releases the stuck pockets of energy that have accumulated as blocks within our biofield, within our minds and our bodies. Um, and then we release those particles to help the pathways flow again. And it like removes the blocks. So like um, energy travels like this, right? And so if you put a block up there, it can't go straight into you. So it finds meanders a way around until it can get to you. So if you remove a block, then it doesn't have to go through those old stories. It can go through the love, right? It can go through the pureness into you. And of course, there's a lot, as you know, there's a lot of, the more you learn, the more you practice, your own healing path, your own healing journey, and meditation and breath work and all that good stuff, then um, the easier it is for the new patterns to take root and happen. But the biofield work is a wonderful modality to really help you start that journey and continue it, because there's no end to the amount of blocks we have put up in our lives. And it just keeps making life better and better by um, using all the different energy modalities that are available. So yes, I do sessions. I do individual sessions. Uh, Next year I'm hoping to have a course available for a group where we can um, uh, do the clearing as a group over a longer length of time, but then also hold each other's intentions each week as we do so. But that'll be coming in next year. But for
Oh,
now, I still
exciting.
do individual sessions, and I do ancestral clearing. I don't like standard medium work. I don't like call on someone and give a message, but a lot of people, like, I wanted to clear for specific ancestors. So sometimes we do that, and often they come. They come when they're ready, if they're ready, and a lot of times they are. And then they do have messages, and I relay that. It's like I don't hear it with my ears. I don't see them with my eyes. My eyes track their energy, and it's like my body, my biofield feels their vibration, and my mind interprets it into English, right? And
That's a good way of
and
saying
I
it.
can
Yeah.
I can relay the message, and they feel better after having energy released, and it releases in you, and it releases in them, because I work in the ancestral field as well as your own field. And you feel better, they feel better. It passes it on down to your descendants, so that when they start their healing journey, they'll be a lot further ahead. And if your children are still growing at home and learning, they'll change faster, because they're not an adult yet and set all in their ways. And the universe is happier, right? And even the ones who have crossed over are happier when their stuck energy is released in you, because it's like, even though their mind has changed, they still have stuck pockets in their biofield. And so we can help that too.
Awesome. Really great work. This is the work of the day. So beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on the show. And, once again, everybody go get that book, Ancestral River, A Spiritual Journey for the Living and the Dead by Carla Adams. I'll put the link down in the show notes. So go check that out. And we're going to just encourage you, share this out with anybody who thinks, that you think would really be served by this. Anybody who's lost a loved one, and you think maybe that person's looking for help, or you just got a message, or whatever it is, this would be just such a great book to share with somebody that's going through that, or anybody that you just inspired to share it with. Go ahead and share the interview and share the book. And thank you very much for doing that. And give us a comment in the show notes. Like, what did you think about the episode? And let us know how it touched you, what it opened up for you. We're really curious. We'd like to know more about what you think. And so we're also, I like to end episodes with some Reiki kisses. So if you'd like to join me in sending love out to everybody, here we go, everybody. We just love you so much. Thank you for tuning in. Love you guys.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Carrie, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you so much. And you guys have a wonderful week. We'll see you next time on Soul Nectar Show. Bye for now, everyone.
Bye.
If you found even one gold nugget in this episode of Soul Nectar Show, will you do us a favor? Will you subscribe, like, and share this episode? Maybe even write a comment and let us know what you thought about it. We really, really want to engage with you at a much deeper level. Let's be part of community together. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. To dive in deeper to nourishing conversation, visit soulnectar.show.
Soul Nectar Show. Awaken, awake, Nectar Show. Take a sip from the drip of nectar, from the source of who you are.